Good morning, afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm George Moss again here at allpointstv.com. And we are also airing on Saturdays at the great radio station, WFOV 92.1. And we are very glad to be partnering with that great radio station, and they're doing a wonderful job over there on that network. Want to give a shout out again to Mr. Paul Herring, the visionary, as I call him here in Flint. And he is one of the persons that is doing something that needs to be done in the community and doing it better than anybody else that I know of can do. And I want to commend him for the fine efforts he's putting forward on behalf of the people here and residents in the Genesee County and the Flint area. My name is George Moss, and we come together every Monday at 2 o'clock, and we do the taping from 2 to 3. And the program is called What's Going On. And we hope to tell you a few things about what's going on, not only from the standpoint of the residents in the city of Flint and the program here, but we have some special guests today to be coming in at the midway point from Nigeria, the most populous state in Africa, and we'll have them come in at the 26-minute mark when we take our break. And we will have them to come in and give us some information from the continent, since everybody is trying to wear the African garments and changing the names. We'll have some people from the continent that will give us the gospel from the continent. Glad to have you with us as always, and I hope you stay tuned for the next hour. And we are going to go back over some things we've talked about in the past and try to bring an update on some things that happened more recently, and particularly last week. You might have been aware, I think it must have been Wednesday last week, where they had Judge Janine that was on The View, and the altercation that occurred there with Whoopi Goldberg, and there was a tremendous storm that was created by the fallout from that program, where Judge Janine was on the program to discuss her book called Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. I don't know why she went on that program to discuss that book, as if that's going to go over well on that program. But that was not a very good reception. I knew Whoopi Goldberg was going to have a problem with the book, and also with the author of the book, and it played out about what I would have thought. I really, when I see these conservatives going into the lion's den, and that is to say, when the conservatives go into the liberal programming, I can tell you right now there's going to be fireworks, because I think the liberal mind is incompatible with things that are rational, and I saw a tremendous amount of irrationality in that program this past week. Whoopi Goldberg just was off the rails, and making threats to a person that you invite into your program, and the person is supposed to be a guest in your show, and therefore they're in your house, and you don't treat them with hospitality. I thought that was really something that could not be, should not be tolerated. But I do notice that, unlike when it happens on the other side of the political spectrum, where people lose their jobs, they're fired, so far we don't see anything that's happened to Whoopi Goldberg for the event that happened last week. So it's still a double standard is what I'm saying. I don't expect anything but fireworks when you have liberals and conservatives liberals and conservatives meeting in the same space, and they're trying to talk seriously about an issue that upsets the liberals. I don't think it's going to remain calm, and it wasn't calm on that program. And after the program was over, I understand that they went downstairs, and Whoopi Goldberg followed Judge Janine downstairs, and it was get out of the studio, and some profanity was used and things of that sort. And I just think that you have to expect that. And Judge Janine said that she'll go back because she's not going to be intimidated, and if they're invited to go back to the program, she'll go back on there again to talk about her book. I can tell you right now, if you go back in the lion's den, you're going to get the same thing. Oil and water doesn't mix, and liberals and conservatives don't mix either. And you're going to get a combustible situation every time when you put those two ingredients together in the same spot. Two objects can't occupy the same space at the same time, and liberals and conservatives cannot occupy the same space at the same time. I've been talking for the last couple of weeks about this book about the liberal mind, written by Lyle Rossiter, who is an MD, and he did research on quote unquote the liberal mind, and he subtitles the book "The Psychological Causes of Political Madness." Now let me read something to you about what Rossiter says about the liberal mind, so that you won't be surprised when you have Judge Janine go into the studio to discuss a book that inflames liberals, her book titled Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. And you're going to go into the liberal domain, going into the lion's den to discuss this book. And those who think you're going to have a rational conversation, I want to read you something that Rossiter says in his book about the liberal mind, the psychological causes of political madness. And on the back of the book, he makes this statement. He says, modern liberalism's irrationality can only be understood as the product of psychopathology. So extravagant are the patterns of thinking that characterize the liberal mind that its relentless protests and demands become understandable only as disorders of the psyche. He asked a question on the top of the back of the book: are liberals out of their minds? And his answer is no different than mine. I haven't done all the research that he did in writing the book, but I have a lot of experience in dealing with these, going in these lion dens also, having been at the university for a number of years, several universities as a matter of fact, for a number of years, and having run into liberals in seminars and being involved in debates with them and things of that sort at the university level. And I have not found many of them that I thought would not have figured into what Rossiter's research shows, and my experiences are not very different from the research that's found in this book here, The Liberal Mind, The Psychological Cause of Political Madness. And I think that we've got to understand what's happening here on these college campuses, which now all these colleges are being run by liberals. And we are getting an anti-American positioning in those universities, and now we're putting out a product that is as anti-American as anyone outside the country. You can talk all you want to about Donald Trump, and he is betraying the country. You can make these are liberals making this noise, by the way, all this noise about how bad Donald Trump is, and he's a traitor. John, have you noticed in that? Donald Trump is a traitor, and here are the traitors, the real traitors, calling Donald Trump a traitor. Here's a man talking about making America great, and these persons that have been driven out of their mind, these persons need psychotherapy. If what Ross is saying here, modern liberalism's irrationality, he calls it irrationality, can only be understood as a product of a psychopathology. And I see it through his lens, because I have experienced this in different places that I've been in my career in dealing with liberals. And I think anybody is expecting anything different than what you're seeing on MSNBC, CNN. Let's name some of the others. You can really name all of them. Go and look at anything that comes out of those other networks, and you see the same. In fact, the narrative is when you look at one station and you change the station, and they're running the same program, they're actually using the same language, because the liberal mind sees in other words, the psychopathology expresses itself similarly. I don't know if you have the same network through which they're getting the information. I just think the liberal mind is a pathological disorder, and it sees reality, what I would call non-reality. It sees non-reality as reality. And so you're getting the sameness in the presentation on these networks, and many people think it's because they have a common source, and they may have a common source, but you don't need a common source in order to explain this. All you need to know is the liberal mind and how the liberal mind operates. And when he asked the question, Ross asked this question, are liberals out of their minds? The answer is yes. And what you're seeing right now in America is that you're seeing the liberal mind being exposed. Donald Trump coming in to office has exposed the liberal mind. And this disorder that was hidden and behind the scenes is now out in the open.
What I think is unusual too is like they always prided themselves to being hyper rational. The left, because if you had any kind of concerns about anything, you voiced any concern about anything. If you didn't like the way things went, you voiced it. They made you sound irrational, like you're just being bizarre or insane. But now with their behavior and they're not being called up, they don't see a serious issue with how they're behaving. And then yet they're supposed to be. They think they're so much more intelligent, and a lot of people who are not that well educated become liberals because they want to be associated with the academics. As if the academics are all that well informed anyway. They have their own niche, and that's it. And that's when I was at the university, I saw that they had their own niche, and they thought that they could speak eloquently about all subjects because of that little niche. They were so. Yeah. I mean, it might have been medieval English, but everything else, they know everything else because of that.
Yeah, John, I tell you, the biggest surprise I had when I went down to the university full time, I was writing. There was a line that the professors were on. We could communicate and write to each other, and we write our ideas, and we'd have conversations back and forth. And what really surprised me was that persons would write me back, but they wouldn't write me online. They would write me in my private posts, and they would say, first of all, they asked, who are you? Because I was a new kid on the block. They asked me, who are you? And once I had gotten into the conversation, they kind of knew I was writing something different. They would write me offline, and here's what they would say. They would say, we agree with you. We agree with you. But we can't say that in our department where we are, and want to know if I was having any trouble with what I was writing and what I was, teaching. And of course, you get the fallout, but I was documenting what I was saying. But they were telling me, and it was an education for me, for them to tell me this. They were telling me that they knew better than some of the things that they were saying, but if they said it, they'd be outlaws in the university and the departments where they are. You got to get tenure and things of that sort. And that's what you see in Hollywood, where there are a lot of conservatives in Hollywood, not Whoopi Goldberg, but they're afraid to come out of the woodwork because if they do, then what about the jobs? What about getting the starring roles in these films?
Well, basically, I'm surprised Tom Selleck is more of a conservative individual. And he's on a TV series called Blue Bloods, playing a law and order guy. He's a commissioner or something like that, and his family's a long line of cops. So, I mean, I'm surprised he's employed. I mean,
yeah.
I'm surprised.
What about Woods? What about that guy? Was it
James Woods?
James Woods.
But I haven't seen him in movies in years. Yeah. I can't recall when. First time I ever saw him of any noteworthy, I think it was Biko. It was the first time I ever saw him in a movie. Now it might have been in all these other ones, but I remember the Biko movie, and he was out, and he was in that. He played a role in that, and he played a white liberal journalist who was a South African journalist back then in that movie, I think it was. That goes back in the 80s or late early 90s, so that's 20 some years. But that's probably I've seen him here and there in other movies. He's a good actor, but I mean, I don't know what kind of roles he's going to get now. I don't.
John, it's very dangerous what's happening in the country. They have the conversation monopolized, and they cover it in such a way as to be able to create the impressions based upon their control of the information. It really is disinformation, and by them controlling it, liberals controlling it, they can actually put into motion certain things where they are operating behind the scenes, and people do not see how they are manipulating the public, and creating and turning them into puppets. For example, look at the Donald Trump being accused of separating the children from their parents. Now, don't forget, people sent their children here from Latin America. And when they get to the border, then the press puts out here Donald Trump is in separating children, snatching them out of the arms of their parents. So Donald Trump's at the border grabbing children and snatching them from their parents And this monster, this anti-American, this guy that's Putin's puppet, who says he wants to make America great, but no, he's a traitor. And they got them talking about Donald Trump having separated children from their parents. What they did not do is when that policy was in fact put in vogue by Barack Obama, they just didn't report it. And because it's not on television, it's not in the media, then as far as American people are concerned, out of sight, out of mind.
But Jed Johnson, he was, part of Obama's administration. He admitted to that. I mean, I was like shocked to hear that admission from him, but I mean, he admitted that started under him. And I don't see why the press didn't focus on what he's saying and do a follow-up. They didn't. They just like, oh, okay. And they just, oh no, it's Donald Trump's thing. Yeah. And another thing is that they're sending their kids so far along, way ahead of them. These migrants are immigrants. I'd say I'd question their parenting skills, because I mean it's like free range parenting. Hey, let your kid go out 4 or 5, cross to another country. Hope for the best, right?
Yeah, and how do you know, without documentation, how do you know if those are the parents of those children? And so Donald Trump gets all the blame, but don't forget how that's being framed. Who's framing it? It's being framed by the people that own the media, the Washington Post, the New York Times, Los Angeles Times on the West Coast, the New England media, the elite on the East Coast, and then you have the elite on the West Coast, the Yankees and the Cowboys, which is a book out called The Yankee Cowboy War between those on in the Northeast. Those would be the Yankees, and the Cowboys in the Southwest. And Carl Oglesby wrote a book about it called the Yankee Cowboy War. This friction between the two regions of the country for the ones that's going to control the power center. Which one's going to be the power center? But the liberals on both in both coasts, the liberal coast, whether it's on the East Coast or the West Coast, it's the liberal coast. California being the most liberal of the states. But over here on the East Coast, you got New York. And what is Washington, D.C.? These are the elite, the liberal elite, that are in back of the information of this country, and they're disseminating it now more widely. You see the results of it. And we're saying, for example, in New York, look at the election just had over there, where they had Ocasio-Cortez that was running on a socialist agenda, and this woman who doesn't know anything. Have you seen on television, John? Ocasio-Cortez. She doesn't know anything, and she defeated, running on a socialist agenda, she defeated a 10-term incumbent and was able to get the vote. It wasn't a big turnout, but she was able to get the voters to turn away from a proven politician. Not that I have a lot of respect for politicians, but to have this politician defeated by a person who is basically ill-informed on practically everything. She makes no sense, and yet she was able to win running on Bernie Sanders' agenda, and she's basically incoherent. But because the liberal press doesn't play it up, you don't hear anything about how unprepared she is for the role she's getting ready to play. And they already are saying that she is a hands-down favorite to win the election in November, because of the fact that there's this liberalism that's on the East Coast, and they're saying she's going to be a shoo-in for the office. But
she was saying about Sanders, and we're going to flip this, or the other candidate, and we're going to flip this seat red. And I was like, red? And no, you're supposed to be blue. And I don't understand that. The conservatives are now labeled red, so I think they're trying to tap into the psyche of the red. Oh no, you don't want to be red,
right?
Because that's like already existing meme in their minds, I
was looking at the same issue. It's surprising that the left, which is basically, if you're talking about taking instructions, they're taking instructions from Karl Marx. That's what the left is. The left is Karl Marx. Or one of the disciples, Saul Alinsky. I mean, what's that person's name? There's another one out there that's talked about in the book called. It's another book out there that's mentioning some of the other leftists out there. I can't think of it right now, but It is Karl Marx, is Saul Alinsky, Gramsci. Gramsci is another one. And all of them are all here to the left, and they're talking about the Republican Party being red states, turning blue states red, turning red states blue, and the red color, red was the communist color, they got red as the color for the conservatives, for the Republican Party, because everything is being turned upside down as a way of both distracting the public and also practicing certain distractions and inversions, where what is up, that's one of the things that the left does, that you have in 1984, George Orwell's book, where up becomes down, down becomes up. You have peace becoming war, war becoming peace. And you have all these inversions going on. And then they have this color scheme where red used to be the color of the Communist Party. Now red is the Conservative Party. The Republican Party now is a red state. Those states that have Republican governors and Republican senators and legislators, those are the red states. How did that happen? This is media manipulation. This is really what was written about by the Canadian writer that wrote the books called Subliminal Seduction, Wilson Bryan Key, who wrote 3 volumes. Subliminal Seduction was one of his books, his first book. Then he wrote a second volume called Media, M-E-D-I-A, Media, Sex, Exploitation. And then his third book, which was a continuation of that discussion of how the media manipulates us into a certain train of thought, his book called The Clam Plate, C-L-A-M, The Clam Plate Orgy, or Other Subliminal Manipulations. And what Wilson Bryan Key is writing about in those 3 books, and not anything different from what Marshall Lujan wrote about in his book called Media Manipulation, is they're talking about how the media is able to create a narrative out of whole cloth and make it appear that the narrative rings true, only because it beats the dead horse more dead and continues it until people catch on to the idea this must be important. Look how long they're covering it.
Did you know that Sigmund Freud's nephew actually wrote a book about propaganda? His last name is Bernays, and he wrote a book about how to use propaganda and stuff. What he did is take a lot of his uncle's work in psychology and psychotherapy and adapted it so how to manipulate people from the onset. The discipline of psychology and sociology to a large degree was used to learn how to have control over people. So I mean, it's not as with those who claim they're a social scientist. A lot of times they have not even often that hidden of an agenda. So I mean, that's why I just like to point out to people, check it out. I just got the book a few months ago. I haven't read it yet, but his name is Bernays.
Bernays, yeah, John. I did not know what I was dealing with when I first began to encounter this psyche. But my view now is that we're wasting our time trying to reason with, how do you reason with a person that is psychopathic? We're talking about the psychopathology in our government. If we think that these politicians are going to rein in their power, and at some point these psychopaths, and that's what they are, that these psychopaths that are wielding power in this country, these people that are in the Congress, the ones in the intel, and I don't care which one of the intel you're talking about, these people are mad. That's what they did this past when they had that conference in Helsinki. They were saying that they asked Donald Trump a question, which was a catch-22 kind of question, where he's caught between a rock and a hard place. And they were asking Donald Trump, did he believe in that the Russians had tried to influence the election? And they were trying to catch him between what Putin had said, because Donald Trump is supposed to be Putin's puppet. Does Putin want to make America great? Donald Trump is making America great again. Is that what Putin is trying to do? Look, you got to be able to understand what's going on with the liberals in this country. That doesn't even make any sense. But they asked Donald Trump this question. The liberal media asked him this question because they understood something about the dynamics of what was going on. And the dynamics was, does he want to give credit to the intel who are trying to take him out of power? That's on the one side. And then Putin over here is an adversary, but the adversary is over here too.
We're coming up on break, by the way. So anyway, any WFOV viewers, please welcome back at after the 30-minute mark, and we'll be back, and we'll bring the guest in. Okay.
Okay, and we do want you to know that we will have, when you come back at WFOV, we will have 2 guests from Nigeria. We want you to stick with us, and we're going to bring the guests in. I'm going to continue to rant here. But I don't think you can reason with the irrational mind, and this idea that we're going to reason with the politicians at some point, and they are going to be beholden to the American people and do their due diligence by the American people. That day is not going to come. We have got to get back control of our government, and our best chance to do it is now under the presidency of Donald J. Trump. Donald Trump is not doing the bad job that they're saying that he's doing. Okay, we're gonna take a break from our discussion and go to another topic with our guests. I'm glad you're here. We're gonna have Miss Esther Ayeri. Thank you for coming to the studio.
Thank you, Joe.
And the ever wonderful and great, we've been having a lot of conversations off the air, Mr. Solomon Atua. And don't say Solomon. He's corrected me a number of times. You said that's S-O. And here we say S-O-Ls. So we begin to say Solomon. Solomon Atua, I-T-U-A, and Miss Esther Ayeri. I'm glad to have you.
Thank you.
What I want to talk about now, we've been talking about the liberal mind, but I want to talk to you about another aspect of identity. And I had to, and the reason I'm going to raise this question with you is I had an experience in Africa in 1984. I went to Egypt, and I was bartering certain goods in Egypt. You know, everything is bartered. You don't pay the price that they quote. You argue the price. So I was in Luxor, and I said to one brother, I said, brother, you gave different prices to the different groups. You gave the Chinese a price, you gave the French a price, and I put my hand next to his and say, look, brother, I said, we are the same, because this person was dark-skinned. So I'm coming out of the American way of looking at identity, and I said, look, brother, we are the same, meaning that we have the same color, we have the same, race, blah, blah, blah. And that brother told me, he said, we're not the same. And he said, you're fatter than I am. He made a distinction based on our weight, how I was fat and he was thin. So in America, you see them wearing the kente cloth and wearing the African clothing and things of that sort. So what I was going to ask is, to start out in our conversation here, is what does Africa think about blacks in America who call themselves African Americans as a way of looking at identity here in the United States? Do they accept the name of blacks in this country who call themselves African American? How does that play in Africa?
Yeah, in Africa we see the kids that were given birth to in America, we see them as Black America, not Africa America. They are Black America because they are from America. They are citizens of America. So that's the way we say it.
So they're Black Americans. And you said African Americans would not be accepted in...
No, we don't see it as African America. We see them as Black Americans.
So in Nigeria, would you say that's what you, from your perspective?
Nigeria specifically, because we see them as all Africans because their ancestors actually came from Africa. But the fact that they are not from Africa.
Okay, they're coming back from break, so let me stop just for a minute here. They're coming back from the break at WFOV. Want to welcome you back. Thank you for returning to the program. We're pretty much where we were when we left. We have our guest here, and that's to my right is Miss Esther Ayeri, and to my left is the very erudite Mr. Solomon Atua. And we're glad to have both of you here at the studio, and thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
We're talking about identity here, and I was asking the guests, how is the identity this idea of African Americans, which is what blacks call themselves now in the United States, coming up from other words that were used to describe their identity here in this country, Negro and some other terms. Now African American. How is that? I was asking, how is that seen in Africa by African people themselves on the continent?
Africa is a big continent, and Nigeria is one of the biggest countries in Africa. Nigeria, from where I came from, we see people here, the black born here as black Americans. Yeah, because even though their color is black, their ancestors actually came from Africa. But the fact that they are born here and they are here means they are American, but they are black American. That's how we see them. So when they come to Nigeria, we always address them as black American. You know?
Black Americans.
Black Americans, yeah.
That's right.
I was called Nubian American when I was in Egypt. They would say Nubian American because Nubia. They don't think in Egypt that ancient Egypt was black. They think it was Arab. So they would say to us, because Nubia would be south of Egypt, and nobody's ever said that the Nubians were not black. So they say Nubian Americans. They would not say that we were, we were talking about Egyptian. We are Cometians. We are people from Kemet. So identity is really more complex than we think it is. We're saying African American, and I think the point you're making is that when you say African American, the term is so broad because Africa has 54 countries in it.
Yeah.
So if you say African American, that identity is to claim the whole continent.
Yeah.
And how diverse is Africa? Like in Nigeria, we're talking about languages. Yeah. How diverse would it be just in Nigeria?
Nigeria specifically is one of the, it's actually the biggest country in Africa, and that's why Nigeria is recognized as the giant of Africa. You understand? So when it comes to language, Nigeria has basically 3 major languages. Yeah, 3 major languages, which is Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba. And other minority languages. We have about 275 other minority languages that are from the 3 major languages. Because the 3 major languages are from the major 3 ethnic groups. So when you break those 3 ethnic groups down, you see several languages that came up from those 3 major languages.
Now, then the Edo language, EDO, is that like in the Delta region on the east?
Yeah, the Edo is one of the minority ethnic group that migrated from a major group from Yoruba. Edo is actually is on the Niger Delta region side, and we are minority group. And the language there also is over 100 languages, only in Edo alone, because Edo is made up of several local governments, and each local government have different languages.
So it really is quite a stretch to say then with all that diversity just in Nigeria alone that you are African, as if you're saying anything specific. You for example, you are Edo.
Yeah.
And you Edo also?
Yeah, I'm Edo.
So when you say Edo, you're being very culturally specific.
Yeah.
And when you say African American, that is so culturally unspecific as to be almost saying nothing. I mean, what are you saying? Because the continent is so diverse.
So when it comes to that, for me, I think the word Africa America is not right, because Africa is a broad continent. It's a very big continent. So if you are saying you're African American, you have to be specific. Which parts of the African American are you from? You have several people from Nigeria. You have several people from Ghana. So African America context for me is not how we see them. We see them as Black American because you can't specifically identify which part of Africa you're talking about. So because we cannot specifically identify which part of Africa you're talking about, so it's wrong for you to say African American. You should be Black American. That's why we see them as Black American. Except you can identify to say, oh yeah, my parents are from Nigeria, I am an American. So that means I am Nigerian American. What about the person whose parents is from Ghana? That person is Ghana American. So you can't let's just go by the color. Why? Whether you're black, so long you're black, you're an African. It doesn't matter what origin you're from, it doesn't matter where you're from, so long your color is black, you are an African. Then because you don't know exactly where in Africa you came from, so you can't say African America, it should be Black America.
Yeah, I have another view to that. The way I see it, the way we see it, we see it as any child that is born in America. The parents could be from Ghana, Gambia, Nigeria. They are recognized as American. Once they get to Nigeria or any part of Africa, we see them as Americans. So we address them as Black American.
You know, the reason I laugh about that is because I had to be baptized into understanding it. I remember when I was in Nigeria, I was in Owerri, and I came downstairs, and there was a lively discussion going on in the lobby. And they had the American students. We carried some students over to Nigeria, and we had the students down there. And you know, you have to think about the arrogance of the West. They want to teach the Africans what it means to have identity. So they're trying to teach them their idea. And so if they disagree, then of course they're wrong, and the Americans, they're right, because the Westerners have this arrogance about them. So I came downstairs, and they were in this animated conversation that they were arguing about. The Americans were saying they're African Americans, and the Nigerians were saying no. So when I came downstairs, one of the students from one of the universities, there were about 3 universities there, and one of the students from the university who had heard me in some of the seminars said, Professor Moss, can you come over here and tell them, now they want to teach the Africans now, don't forget, and tell them, meaning teach them, don't we call ourselves African Americans? So I went over, Solomon, and I said to them that, yes, you do, but that is not what they're arguing with you about.
Yeah.
What they're arguing with you about is, and they're not saying that you don't call yourself that over in the United States. What they're arguing with you about is they don't accept it.
Yeah.
That's right.
They couldn't understand. They thought they were arguing about whether or not that was true back home, that they called themselves these names. What the people in Nigeria were saying is that, well, yeah, we accept it, that's what you say.
Yeah.
But what you say, we don't agree with.
We don't recognize them.
Yeah. And so I can laugh because I learned that in Egypt back in '84. I was in Egypt in '84.
Oh, okay.
But so when I went to Africa with the students to West Africa, I pretty much had gotten it down to a science at that point. But when I first went over there, I was as confused as they were. But and I've had experiences with other African nations too. I've been in 17 African countries, and I have yet to find one where they agree that the identity is anything other than what you're saying here, Solomon, and what you're saying as in terms of how you see it from your standpoint. Let me ask you this question. We were talking about this on the way to the studio. I was asking, what would happen in Nigeria if you, as an Edo, and you married an Igbo? I'm an Igbo chief. I was made Igbo chief in 2009.
Yeah.
So what would happen, and I have a specific interest in this question, what would happen if a Edo married an Igbo and you have 2 cultures here blending together and they have a child? What would the child be Edo, or would the child be Igbo, or how would the identity of the child play out in that situation?
Yeah, the way we say the child, first of all, will be a Nigerian. Then, being in Nigeria, we also identify the child to be mostly part of the father's culture. If the father is from Igbo, we see the child as an Igbo child.
If the dad is Igbo?
Yeah, the child will come mostly from Igbo. You say the child ancestors is from Igbo because the father is from Igbo.
Mm.
Yeah.
So the father would be the identity of the child.
Yeah, that is the culture, because Nigeria has diverse culture. So the Igbo and the Edo parents coming together as husband and wife, they have to blend the 2 cultures together. Why they are blending the 2 cultures? Their children automatically, by nature of their birth, becomes an Edo. They claim the father's side. The father's side is supreme. The father's origin is supreme, and it stands. So automatically the child are all from the Igbo, where the father comes from. They recognize the fact that they are also they are partly Edo because their mom is from Edo, but the children are not from Edo. They are from the father's side, which is Igbo. That is, there is no two way about it. That's what that's what the culture recognizes, and that's what's practicable in Nigeria.
And it doesn't cause any problem in terms of the...
No, it doesn't cause any. It's natural. That is the way it automatically is. The child becomes it claims the place where the father comes from. Yeah, if me and Edo get to marry an Igbo lady, the only problem we're going to have is the language, because we're going to try to see how we can blend the two languages together, because that is where there's going to be a problem. And also the culture. Before I marry the girl, I must also try and understand her culture. She also understands my culture. But the children, there is no argument about that. As soon as the children come to life, they are all from Igbo.
You know, I find that really interesting, because what I would expect it to be the case is that if the child is going to take on the identity of the father, then if the Edo would be the woman marrying into Igbo, you're growing the Igbo identity and you're downsizing the Edo identity, because the person is going to be identifying with the male culture.
Yeah.
So what surprises me is that doesn't cause a friction in terms of how the group, where the matriarchy idea, the woman coming from this group, it surprises me that group would not have a problem, since the identity here would be lost in the marriage. And this would be a gaining of the identity given the males in the other group.
Yeah.
But you're saying it doesn't cause a problem.
It doesn't cause a problem because it is supreme. You know, the identity of the father is automatically supersede. The child becomes the dad's identity. The only problem is the language, because if I marry any woman from anywhere, we must make sure firstly you speak English, which is the official language. But the wife must learn to also understand the language of the husband. But the kids growing up will only speak the dad's language. They might decide to speak little of the mother language, but it's insignificant. Automatically, they claim the identity of the father, and they also learn the father's language and the father's culture. Now,
you said in Ghana it would be different. In Ghana, in terms of the identity would be through the female. In Ghana, is it different in Ghana?
Yeah, in Ghana, I heard that it's not the case in Ghana. You know, what is the Nigerian culture is different. Like Ghana, if the child from Ghana, a woman from Ghana marry a man from Nigeria, for instance, automatically the children are from Ghana. They claim the mother's identity, not the father's identity.
What if they move to Nigeria?
If they move to Nigeria, they are just going to be Nigerians as visitors. They are from Ghana.
Okay.
Because that's what stands. That's what they practice in Ghana. But that has always been, there's always been conflict in that, because I can't imagine me, a Nigerian man, marrying a Ghana, for instance, and my kids are claiming Ghana. No, they're going to be friction. Oh no, I'm going to tell you, no, I'm a Nigerian, and that's what we do here. And of course, before marrying the Ghana woman, I must first of all solve that problem, if it's something I can take. Because automatically children are from Ghana. But I won't be able to take that, because I'm supposed to be
Yeah, it's just interesting how diverse identity is. Now, in Latin America, there are people who consider themselves to be white. They could look like the ace of spades, but if they have money, you're white according to how much money you have. So there are people in Latin America that would express themselves as being white because they're rich, and they associate rich with being white there. So identity is a lot more than we think it is, and we think of it in terms of the binary, black and white and things of that sort. And we have people right now in the United States who are like this woman named Rachel Dozell. She has 2 white parents, and she was working as a director, field office director of one of the offices in the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and she was passing herself off as a black person. And when they called her on it, she said, well, I think of myself as being black. So let me ask you this question then. do you have persons that would be you're Edo? Do you have people that are Edo who would like to then claim the identity of the Igbo? Would that ever happen in Nigeria?
No, such never happened because identity, where you're from, is very important. Your state of origin in Nigeria, for instance, is a very, very important issue. So they don't compromise that. You don't claim where you're not from. Even if you don't know where you're from, you must know where your dad comes from. So wherever your dad comes from is where you're from, and that's your state of origin.
So identity is kind of static.
It's automatic. You don't. There's no
You can't choose.
You can choose.
You can't change.
Your belt is your belt that choose. It's a natural thing.
Yeah, and then we also identify them by their tongue because we have different languages. So by the time they speak, we have a way of knowing where each and everybody is from in Nigeria, because we speak different languages, and then the accent is also different. Yeah,
we have an asset problem. We have that asset identity, because if I speak now, people automatically know where I'm from. Oh yeah, the way you speak, your accent, I think you're from Edo. If an Igbo person come here and talk, automatically we'll know, oh, guy, you're from Edo. We know that. Because the answer is
that's interesting. Yeah. Now, I knew a Nigerian that was in Gambia, and she was from Warri, W-A-R-R-I. Is that Edo? Is Warri?
No, Warri is part of the Delta region.
It's part of the Delta region. Yeah. So she would not have been Edo in Warri?
No, she wouldn't have been Edo. The only problem, many years back, Edo and Delta were one state.
Okay.
So they were together as Bendel. That was like over 20 years ago. They were Bendel. So it's a very big state. So at a point, the state was divided into two. So Delta came out of Bendel, Edo came out of Bendel. Those are the two states that were created out of Bendel. So from then, there have been two different states. So if you're from Warri, you're from Delta, you're from the Niger Delta. Then if I'm from Edo, I am from Edo, and we are all still part of Niger Delta, but we are now two different states.
Could either of you distinguish between a person from Nigeria, let's say, and a person from Gambia? Would you be able to physically distinguish between the two populations?
Yes, by their look.
By their look.
Them. Yes.
By their
One,
look.
by their look, and secondly, when they speak, by their look, like somebody from Gambia or Ghana, their skin is darker than the person from Nigeria. And then when they speak, their tone is also very different from Nigeria.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting too. I know that in one conversation I was having, they were talking about they were talking about the Madinka, and they would say Madinka Kanaki and the Madinka what was the other one they were saying? Guinea-Bissau. They were saying that there was the distinction was not ethnic. It was really the accent. In one part they had this accent, and then in Kanaki, which would be Guinea, the French, formerly the French colony, they would say that they could hear the distinction between the accent, although the language would be the same language, but they could make a distinction between this group and that group, although ethnically they're linked, and things of that sort. So it's a lot more complex than we think it is in this country. But when you hear African American, which is, you hear that all the time here. So when you hear African American, what goes off in your mind?
When I came to America, that's what I heard everywhere. Everybody say Africa America. I'm from Africa America. What Africa America? I said, oh, okay. You feel you're from Africa, right? I said, okay. I was communicating with one guy. So you're Africa America? Oh yeah, I'm from Africa and I'm from Nigeria. I said, you tell me where you're from. He said, I'm from America. Okay, so where is your lineage? Where did you think you originated from? He said, I don't know. I'm from America. My parents, my ancestors might be from Africa, so I am from America. So I think my ancestors are from Africa, so I'm African American. I said, if you think your ancestors is from Africa, so where in Africa do you think your ancestors is from? He said, I don't know. I said, okay. I said, that's the reason why we see you guys as black Americans.
Black Americans.
Even right now, if a woman from Nigeria comes into America to have a baby, that baby is not in Nigeria, it's not an Africa baby. That baby automatically is an American child. So we recognize any child born here as an American.
American citizen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But your parents
Might be
from Nigeria.
You know something? If we would be honest about it in the United States, that is really how the founders saw it. You know, they're trying to say that they're, when they say natural born, they try to say that only presidents that are natural born can be president of the United States. If they are naturalized, meaning they are born outside the country and they're naturalized, the framers thought of it as, if you're outside the country, you're not American because you're born outside the country. Now here they're trying to say, they had this guy running for president. What's his name, John? The one who's running for president that was born in Canada.
Was that wasn't Ted Cruz?
Ted
Cruz, yeah.
See, we're trying to say Ted Cruz was eligible because his parents were American, but that's not the framers saw it. The framers saw it the way you're saying it. Were you aware of that, John?
And another thing is too, it's like I've always seen it too, is that basically they wanted people to have a connection to the country and be associated with that country, psychologically, I guess, the way I'm reading, and they wanted to be connected to it.
Yeah, Mark Levine and those guys do not have it right. I have it right and they have it wrong. I'm going to correct them right now. Mark Levine was wrong. Ted Cruz is not eligible to be president, but based on how the framers saw it. See, the framers, they say we can't tell the difference because they have American parents. The parents, both of them were American, so even though it was born outside, they're natural born because they are born through the mother.
Well, McCain, they tried to bring that thing up too, and he was born in the Panama Canal Zone, and his parents were American, and where he was born was, the Canal Zone was considered American territory. So, I wish we could have eliminated him for that because I don't like him.
That's a stretch too because we didn't have empire at the point of the founding of the document. That's wrong also.
That's an interesting point then. I didn't even think about that.
Look, these people are trying. Look, I want to tell the truth. See, the reason why that would not fly with the founders is because they were not talking about bloodline. Bloodline is not the only thing. You know what they're concerned about, John? What they were concerned about was treason. If you're born under another flag, and that's the point you're making here, and you say if they're born here, they're American, because it's a flag issue. And if you're born under another flag, how do we know where your allegiance is? And they're going to try to act like it's about there's just soli by the soil, and there's just
sanguinis, which means blood.
Just sanguinis. By bloodline. They say, well, the parents are American, therefore, when a child is born, it doesn't make a difference. They did with the framers. The framers called them naturalized citizens. It was naturalized, John, and you can go and read the documents about that.
And Alexander Hamilton actually was born outside the country himself.
Born in Navis. He was born in Navis. And so those persons were ineligible to run for president. But you know how people choose sides and they make the facts fit their own narrative, and so we have to stick with the facts here, and that's why I want this clarity that you're bringing to the discussion today, and you've helped, I think, our viewers a lot to clarify, because the way identity is seen on the continent of Africa is very different than the way it's seen over here. And I know when I went over there with my nonsense, thinking I had it going on, and I was able to go over there and teach them, I came back here with another education myself.
Yeah, that issue can be explained in two ways. Because when you're born outside the country, constitutionally, it has to be addressed in two ways. You address it constitutionally and you address it culturally. By Nigerian culture, the child born by the parents of two Americans constitutionally is not an American, but traditionally it's an American, because you're born by two American parents. So it's just because they are born outside America is the reason why they are constitutionally saying they are not American.
That's exactly, you're saying it exactly right. The framers had that idea that if you're born outside the country, this was a flag issue, it was not a blood issue. And John, the way we know that, they're talking about treason right now. You know how they keep saying Donald Trump is guilty of treason? The framers were really concerned about treason. They knew that your allegiance could be split between one country and another country, and they wanted your allegiance to be solely upon the United States. Therefore, the soil born on the soil was the issue. No matter what, if your parents are born here, okay, fine, they're Americans. But the child born elsewhere, that child is not American because it's not tied to the soil. The flag is different, and that's what the concern was. And I was saying at that time, when Ted Cruz was running in 2016, I was saying if he's elected, I'm going to object. He's not qualified to be president. But some of the ones that loved his ideas and were identifying with his philosophy, they wanted to make him a natural-born citizen. Natural-born citizen, my foot, born in Canada. Give me a break.
Well, years ago, Orrin Hatch wanted to introduce legislation to repeal the amendment to allow Arnold Schwarzenegger to run for president because he was so enamored with the celebrity that Schwarzenegger was enjoying at that time. Thankfully, that didn't take any root. But yeah, this was back in the 90s. He wanted to do that, and I thought I was appalled, But because there's no way. And let's see, he was a governor of California. He didn't do that good of a job, in my opinion. But
yeah, I asked earlier if you could tell and make a distinction between Nigerians and other persons in the country of Africa. You said that you could. Could you tell where else they'd be from then? For example, you would know that they are not Nigerians, but would you be able to tell what country possibly they'd be from, or you wouldn't be able to be that specific?
No, we won't be able to be specific. What we're going to be very sure about is knowing they're not from Nigeria. But we might not be able to specifically say this is where they are from. Yeah, because so many other African countries are so much alike. So but we can identify that they are not Nigerians.
We're running out of time here, but let me ask you real quickly, the kola nut. The kola nut is real. It's a mythical story about the kola nut in Igbo culture. They claim it's a legendary story, mythological story, that their ancestry comes from the kola nut.
Kola nut?
The kola nut, K-O-L-A, the kola nut.
Yeah.
So is there something, but I found the kola nut being of some recognition in other cultures too.
Yeah.
What is it? Would it be something in Edo culture also?
Yeah. Kola nut in Edo is a symbol of prayer.
A prayer.
Yeah, is recognized as something that brings unity and is used to pray, because traditionally there is no other thing you can use to identify culture. Kola nut is very important when it comes to all culture in Nigeria. Kola nut is respected and it's a symbol of prayer, symbol of peace and unity.
Do you start off, when you start off a formal event, do you start off with the kola nut?
Yes.
Whatever.
The way we say it in Nigeria, we say it as who brings kola nut brings happiness.
I see.
Yes. So it's a sign of bringing happiness into a gathering. Or when you go to visit someone, the person offer you a kola nut. The sign of you're happily received. You're welcome to my home.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if I come there and say, "Do you have cola?" and you say no, are you saying I'm not welcome?
No, you don't need to ask. The person you're going to visit we offer you. The person will naturally be the one to offer you kola nut.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've enjoyed having you as guest. Glad you came into the studio today.
Yeah.
John is over there. Whenever John starts doing this right here, sawing his neck off, I know it's time for me to get out of here. Until next time, we want you to always follow your dream, because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.